If John Barton couldn't be alright, no one's going to be alright. It's been 3 months since my last confession. I always wanted to be part of his world. But I don't belong there. God, he didn't even belong there. I don't belong anywhere, and I hate it.
What is it with wogs?
Stupid bitch.
At least I'm not a bastard.
What is it about this scene that makes it so powerful, makes people so emotional when they watch it? A lot of us seem to cheer Josie on after committing such a violent act. And partly the director wants us to do that. But there's a lot more deeper meaning behind what's happening in terms of who Josie and Carly symbolise during this moment. But first, I think we should think about what Josie says in the confessional box in the church about John Barton, her friend, who recently committed suicide. She talks about how she can never be part of his world, which is an interesting idea. How could someone be from a different world, even though they're not obviously literally from a different world? What does that mean? What she's referring to is their difference in social class, the difference in wealth and status, and the fact that she's a Wog, and the fact that he is an Anglo, and what that means in the society she lives in at the time. She feels like those things make her so far away from what he is, that they live in two different worlds. And Carly, someone who she despises, and who much of the audience tends to despise because of her attitude and personality and general bullying nature, she's part of the world that John Barton's part of as well. And Josie has that sense that she's trapped between not wanting to be part of her own culture and her own social class, and also not being able to move into such a class that Carly and John was a part of. This is a massive part of Josie's struggles throughout the film, and a big part of what she has to deal with as she comes to mature and develop. This act here is not just her hitting Carly, but it's her unleashing her anger and frustration at a social class that continues to push her down and refuse to let her belong, or feel a sense of belonging among them.
So instead of saying, why me when it happens, maybe we should be saying, what can I do to prevent it? It's up to all of us. Thank you.
In this moment, Josie feels a sense of pride because she's on a stage where really her status doesn't matter that much. She's able to represent her school and able to compete against people that she feels are outside of her social class. And you can see the pride in her face in this moment, knowing that she's done herself proud. We're going to take a look at a new character being introduced in a moment, Jacob, who many of you know. And we're going to look at the difference between his social class and where he stands in regards to other people compared to Josie and John. And I want you to see how those differences, stark as they are portrayed.
Our next speaker is the captain of one of
Hey, I
our...
liked your speech, by the way. I was rooting away for years before I started using a condom, and it scares me shitless to think of the risks I took.
Thanks for sharing that with me.
I think I'll follow your lead and show them all how to put one of these on.
Notice the way in which Jacob is introduced as leaning back and being generally more informal and relaxed. His uniform is so different, and compared to John, he almost comes from a different world as Josie would see him. His language is a bit more vulgar, a bit more crass, and as we're about to see, he has a unique way of seeing the world. Let's look at how he tends to deal with this different social class and how he allows it to define him, or not define him, as it were.
How you going? I'm Jacob Coote from Cook High. Two things happened to me yesterday. The first was I received all this shit about voting for the first time. And so I tore it up and chucked it in the bin because I reckon politicians are a bunch of dickheads and they bore me stupid. But then the second thing was my old man wanted to watch this documentary on SBS about insects rooting on fig leaves. So I caught the end of the world news and I saw these three guys dragging a friend of theirs who'd been shot. And he'd been shot by their own army because they were protesting about something. And the only thing I understood about it was that the guy was wearing a Nick Cave t-shirt. But then I wondered how some guy my age with my taste in music gets himself into a situation where his own government is trying to kill him just because he has something to say. And I figured that in this country we vote not to get the best party in because there's no such thing, but we vote to keep the worst party out. Because I kind of like the idea of standing up here and calling our Prime Minister a dickhead without someone trying to shoot me and stop you all from listening. And because I don't want to end up on the news one day being watched by some ignorant idiot on the other side of the world who believes that this can't happen to him. Cheers.
He's not too bad.
Oh, it doesn't do anything for me.
Now, Jacob obviously has his own struggles and imperfections that he deals with. But what he does represent in the film, and eventually to Josie, is the ability of someone to reach beyond or transcend their social class and be unique in their own way. He likes to offend people and offends people who are higher up in social class, such as the politicians and John's father. And because of this, Josie initially disregards him and he shows herself as not really approving of him. His classmates from his state school do approve of him, and he's quite popular there. However, he's not really concerned with what people think of him at all. He's just sort of speaking his mind. As these three worlds come to clash, as you see on the screen, John, Josie and Jacob, you see three different social classes and three different people dealing with their own situation in different ways. We know that John struggles with the pressures and burdens, which we'll talk about at a later date. We know that Jacob tends to try to defy these social class expectations and sometimes feels judged by Josie later on. And Josie's sort of torn between the two ideals and eventually works out a way to find an understanding between her aspirations, expectations, and who she wants to be as an individual. Finally, here's a couple more clips that really signify the tension between the privileged class and the underclass in the film, and the friendship between Josie and her friends, and that of Carly and her friends, and how they act as groups in almost opposition to each other, with Carly and her friends looking down and really regretting the existence of Josie and people like her.
These are my friends Sarah and Anna. Hey. We kind of happened by default. When everyone was choosing their friends in Year 7, we were the only ones left in the playground.
Did you hear what her father said on his show?
Fucking racist.
Someone should have had the guts to say it years ago. Next he's tackling wogs on handouts.
That comment by Carly really stings Josie, and it's really offensive because the idea of wogs on handouts is essentially talking about how the government in her eyes and her father's eyes is giving free things to European migrants and people of Josie's background. And it also implies the fact that Josie, even though she worked hard to earn a scholarship into the school, didn't really deserve to go to the school. She got there through sort of tokenism rather than merit. And it's really important that these comments, after being told to her day by day by day, are an act of oppression by Carly and continually make her feel like she doesn't belong where she is. It's a really big, stark difference that's continually pointed out by Carly, and something that Josie and her friends regret and causes her friends to pull away from the group altogether. There are many more clips we could look at, but I think the three we've seen today really signify how social class is one of the biggest challenges present in the film, and particularly for the protagonist Josie, as she comes to recognise and accept who she is in a polarised and tense environment. society that's split up by social class.